How's it going, guys? This is your budget gamer here, coming at you with an $850 PC build. Now, this PC build, I'm going to give you the flexibility between choosing between the 970 and the 390. Both are great video cards, and as I go along, I will talk in depth about both. For the first part, I decided to choose the AMD FX 6300, running at 3.5 gigahertz. This is a 6-core processor. This will be fine for this build. Usually, if you had a better processor, you maybe can squeeze a couple frames out of it. But this processor will not bottleneck your video card. You will still get great gaming performance. Maybe not so much on the video rendering and editing side, but for this it's fine. It has the AM3 Plus socket, so you need to get motherboards that are compatible with that. It has a low thermal wattage of 95 watts and has its own CPU cooler. Many people have great things to say about this CPU. I have this CPU, this PC in general that I will be recording. I have a lot of footage for in terms, and because I have the exact CPU and GPU, I can give you the most rounded specs in terms of what games you can expect performance from. So for the motherboard, I decided to choose the ASRock 970M Pro 3. It's a micro ATX motherboard. It also has the AM3 Plus socket, and it also has support for many different memory types up to 2400 megahertz. It has a supported memory of 64 gigabytes, which is huge. So if you had maybe a single 8-stick of gigabyte RAM, you could put 4 of them and have 32 gigabytes, or you could have even higher gigabyte amounts. This has Crossfire support and has RAID support. It has 6 gigabit per second ports, which is great. That means you can plug up to about 6 hard drives or whatever you're choosing in hard drive, and SSD, and optical drive. You have those data transfer options available when you have that many ports. So for the RAM, I decided to choose the Kingston HyperX Fury Black, running at 8 gigabytes, and this is two 4 gigabyte sticks running at DDR3 1600 megahertz. Any size memory is fine. Like I said, in the motherboard you have choice up to 2400. The usual industry standard is 1600, running at DDR3 right now. Has its own heat spreader. It's a black and silver color scheme, and as far as the biggest games like Witcher 3 and GTA 5, I benchmarked those games, and it only uses about 6 gigabytes of RAM, so you're good for now. If you want to play it safe, you can get 16 gigabytes of RAM right off the bat, and you won't have any trouble for the entire next gen of gaming for sure. So moving on, we chose the Western Digital Caviar Blue as our storage. This is a 1 terabyte hard drive running at 7200 RPM. It is a 3.5 inch in width internal hard drive. And about the boot up times, maybe are around a minute and a half. If you wanted to load games, it can load it around 5 to 10 seconds at the most. Maybe for the bigger games such as Battlefield and Witcher, you're gonna have to expect a little longer loading times, maybe 20 to 30 seconds, but it isn't something too crazy. If you want to get faster loading times, you can include an SSD, but we can't fit it in this budget. And moving on to the crux of the build, I decided to choose the Asus GeForce GTX 970. Now, I chose this card because I have it myself. I'm not biased towards NVIDIA. I'm just going to go ahead and say that now. I'm actually more proud of what AMD is doing and what they can try to accomplish. But right now, in terms of the support early on, NVIDIA is still technically winning. In the future, with DirectX support, AMD might win based on some of the numbers that they gave, but until we see real world performance, we can't actually do that. Maybe I'll do an updated build and actually give recommendations. So you can either choose between the GTX 970, or you could choose a model of the R9 390. Now, some of them are actually cheaper than the 970, but a lot of people have different complaints. But let me just list the pros of the 390. The pros of the 390 is that you get 8 gigabytes of VRAM, while for the GTX 970, they promote 4 gigabytes, but it's actually 3.5. I don't know, there was this huge industry debacle, but there's 3.5 gigabytes of VRAM, so it's half the amount that AMD has. However, it really is a faster card, and it just runs games really well. At higher resolutions, though, I would suggest, if you're going at 1440p, I would really suggest the R9 390. But if you just want to destroy games at 1080p while having features like a 0 decibel fan, which does not make any noise for games like Counter-Strike or League of Legends, and and is 30% quieter than most cards, then I would say go with the GTX 970. There are some features. They have their own specialized cooler. And for the case that we're choosing, this is a particularly long card, but so is most 390s as well. Both of them have back plates, which are really nice features. For the GTX 970, it runs at a core clock of 1.11 gigahertz. So this is the Strix edition. It actually runs at a higher core clock than most video cards, which is really nice. It supports 3-way SLI. We can't do that in this build. You'd have to choose a build that has SLI support, and it has 3 slots for that. It has a low TDP of 145 watts. It supports G-Sync, so if you wanted to get a monitor that supports G-Sync, then you'll get no screen tearing at all in your games, which is really nice. It has 2 DVI ports, a display port, and an HDMI port, and a lot of people have very good things to say about this card. It is a little heavy on the heavy side, so be careful. Try not to move your computer too much. Screw in the bolts kind of tight into the case so you can make sure that this card doesn't, have GPU sag. But yeah, if you wanted to choose the 390, you can actually save a little bit more on the build. Right now, the build comes up to $157, and that's just that's based on the cheapest GTX 970 model that we can find. But in terms of other 390 models, there are actually cheaper ones. There's one as cheap as maybe $350. Some of them say that they have high heat outputs and high noise, so you got to look out for that. The reason why I love the GTX 970, this particular version, is that the fan is actually very quiet, like I said before, so you're getting almost an more enjoyable gaming experience, or you can get a little bit more performance, and that is your choice. In the future, I feel like the R9 390 will kick the GTX 970's ass, but for now, the GTX 970 is technically a better card than the R9 390. Technically, spec-wise, R9 390 is better. In the future, when AMD has more support, then the R9 390 will flourish. But right now, it's more on the NVIDIA side at the moment. So for the case, I decided to choose the Corsair Spec 01. So this is the case that I recommended in a lot of my builds. It's just a gaming oriented case. It has a lot of features that are gaming oriented. It has a side panel window. I know a lot of gamers would love to stare into their case and to see whatever parts they have. That's their choice. They can do whatever they want. In terms of the case, there are holes to route your cables, very long video card support. Like I said before, the Asus Strix is actually a technically very long card, and if you were to have the hard drive cage swinging up like this, then it might potentially block it. So it's very useful to have a case that it gives you support for video cards that could have 3 fans at the most, and it also has support. It also has a lot of support for case fans, so it looks like it could support up to 8 case fans, which is huge. It comes with its own LED fan, supports ATX, micro ATX, mini ITX boards, has 4 hard drive bays, 2 optical drive bays. Doesn't include its own power supply, but obviously, like most power supplies that come with cases aren't that great. Has front panel USB support for 3.0, so that's nice because our motherboard has that too. Over there, so you're gonna get your bang for buck out of this case, no problem. For the power supply, I decided to choose the EVGA 500 watt 80 plus bronze certified power supply. This power supply is bronze certified, like I said before, which means the efficiency is better than non-certified power supplies. With a price like $57 or a little more, you're not gonna find modular power supplies. The cables will still come out. If you want to pay a little bit more, you can get a semi-modular or a full modular power supply, but all the cables are attached. Luckily for us, our case has routing holes so that you can hide your cables in the back or however so you choose. Yeah. For most graphics cards, if you're running a 1 graphic card build, the 500 watt should be more than enough for anything. Check out Jay's 2 cents video on how much watts you need from a power supply, and you'll see that no game really pushes it past the limit of 500 watts. Most of them maybe run about 250 watts, 300 watts, and you need about half of what the final number is, so half of 500 to reach the efficiency that you would want from your graphics card to output. So those are all the parts of the build. Like I said, it comes up to $850. If you want to go lower, you can get an R9 390, and in the future, it's more future-proof than our GTX 970. But right now, the GTX 70 is badass, and I can give you benchmarks soon on how this entire PC will perform. A lot of the games perform, let's say, the higher-end games will perform up to 60 to 80 frames a second, while the lower-end games you can blast to around 160, 170 frames per second. And maybe in the future, I'll give 14 to 40p coverage and see how good this card does, and maybe in the future I might upgrade to another card and you can see that also. Either way, this is Your Budget Gamer signing out.